All right, folks, let's keep the show going and start talking about the integumentary system. So this is our first body system for the course, and it should be a great jumping off point for what the rest of the course is going to be like. From this point forward, every week, you're going to be responsible for learning 2 body systems. I've arranged them so that they have some things in common, like shared organs or a similar function, just to make it easier to try and digest this content. So like always, let's start with our objectives. By the end of these lessons, you should be able to list the main structures and functions of the integumentary system. That's going to be like the different layers of skin and all the organs and structures inside of it. We'll specifically look at the different layers of skin and which layers the different organs are located. We'll talk about different types of sweat glands and their location. We'll look at keratin and melanin, and finally end up on the effects of aging and injury to the integumentary system. This is an anatomy physiology course, not a pathology course, so I won't delve too deep into the disease. For my nursing and paramedic students in the course, you'll get into that much later in your studies. So let's start off with an introductory lesson with a chat about membranes. There are a few types of membranes in the body, so we'll start by classifying them by what they're made of. Epithelial membranes are made up of layers of epithelial tissue connected to an underlying layer of connective tissue, and that's called the basement membrane. A connective tissue membrane would be made exclusively of connective tissue. If we look on this image, most of the body's organs are covered with epithelial membranes. Connective tissue membranes are predominantly found in joints, where membranes help keep the cartilage and fluid in place. Epithelial membranes can be broken down into categories. We have cutaneous, which would be the skin, and serous membranes. Serous membranes would be a layer of simple squamous epithelium, whereas cutaneous membranes are more stratified and have multiple layers. Serous membranes can be found covering organs, and typically there are 2 membranes between an organ and a cavity wall, a pleural layer and a visceral layer. So for example, the lungs are in the pleural space, so covering the lungs themselves, we have a visceral pleura, and covering the inside of the chest wall, we have a parietal pleura. The purpose of these is to add a lubricant and reduce friction, so the organs don't get damaged as they move. A third type of epithelial membrane would be a mucous membrane. These are typically produced by cuboidal or columnar cells and would line body surfaces that are open directly to the exterior, like your mouth. Mucus or secretions help protect the membranes from disease as well as keep them moist and intact. Like I said before, connective tissue membranes would primarily be found in the joints. Remember from the last series, joints are made of cartilage, that gristle-like connective tissue. These membranes produce a lubricant called a synovial fluid, which helps our joints move easily and helps our bones move when we need to. So let's step back to that cutaneous membrane and have a deeper look at the skin. It's where we're mostly going to spend a lot of the time on this discussion. So there are 2 primary layers of skin. We have our epidermis and our dermis. The epidermis is the outermost layer. It's made up of a bunch of layers of stratified squamous epithelium. As you can see here, the epidermis is the outermost layer, and it provides protection to our skin, both from physical injury and from things like radiation from the sun. Coming up through, we have ducts for sweat and oil glands, as well as various hairs. The epidermis can be broken down into 2 layers, the stratum germinativum, or the stratum basale. And this is the lowest layer of the epidermis. It sits right on top of the dermal epidural junction, and it's made up of these columnar cells. As these columnar cells grow and divide, new ones push the older ones up. This pushing motion causes the columnar cells to flatten and become squamous cells. Their cytoplasm is also replaced with a chemical called keratin. It makes our skin waterproof and very tough. It's the same stuff that like your nails are made of. The stratum corneum, the second part of our epidermis, is the uppermost layer, and it's made of flattened dead skin cells filled with keratin. As newer cells work their way up to the stratum corneum, these top layers will eventually die and flake off. The epidermis is normally a skin tone color, and that color ranges due to the amount of melanin in the skin. The darker colored skin you are, the more melanin you have present. There are some diseases that also cause the epidermis to change color. Things like lack of oxygen, change of blood flow, or liver failure can cause these color changes. If you work in healthcare, these are really important signs to catch, as they can often be the first sign of illness.